The science is clear. The world's climate is changing in small ways and in large. The speed and scope of these changes are worse than even the worst case predictions from 15 or 20 years ago. Most of this science is focused on the environmental aspects of the changing climate and less on its political causes and consequences. This is the topic that I want to focus on today. And it arises out of a puzzle that I and more social scientists are recognizing and are struggling to deal with. A lot of these changes in human behavior are occurring in areas in which there are strong or established or at least recognized political institutions. The human decisions that are made are not made in a state of nature. There are political governments at various levels that have to acquiesce in the kind of changes in human behavior and the location and the nature of this behavior around the world. And I think for me the puzzle is the recent debate on the discussion of climate change and the responses that are necessary have been focused more on understanding there is an issue and understanding the earth science kind of aspect to it, to understand what's actually changing, than understanding the political institutions that have enabled such change, as well as the institutions that are going to be necessary to either mitigate or adapt to those changes. So the puzzle is there's a lot more research on the hard sciences than the soft, and understanding an issue that for 50 years the focus has been more on raising awareness than understanding what roles and what the incentive structures are within governments to be able to address those changes. So I think I have two questions for today. Why has these activities and climate change become politicized over the last couple decades, and why the domestic and international responses have been uneven across countries? And we're going to focus more on the domestic and international responses in the third part of the class. But today I just want to highlight some initial trends that are going to be relevant to the second part of the class, in which we're looking at specific human security and environmental factors and how they shape conflict and stability. And I think this class is getting to the last major part of this path diagram that we've looked at, the puzzle of the links between environmental structural changes, human security issues, and the likelihood of conflict. Today I want to focus on a couple of things: the changing human relationship with the environment, the nature and extent to climate change anomalies, how climate links to conflict, which is directly related to the readings for today, and then focus on a case study to see how these kind of macro level comparative explanations for links between environment and conflict work in a specific country. We'll see how much time we have to get to that in the end. And I think the why we should care part of this should be pretty clear. What legacy are we living for future generations? What legacies were left for us? How should we live our lives given the knowledge that we have as individuals and governments about our effects on the natural world, which in turn affects our lives, as we saw with the fires this summer? And how can we kind of see the day-to-day reality that David Foster Wallace water kind of part of these things that we understand maybe intellectually, but not viscerally, how individual decisions and governments' decisions interact with each other, and that are linked to try to understand the world, and how there's been a lot of talk about how the environment and resource scarcity is linked to conflict, or potentially resource abundance, tying it into the Collier and Hoffler greed model for conflict. But how can we link, or can there be direct links between environmental scarcity or abundance and conflict? Or do you need to look at how that interacts with other aspects of the human world? So let's get started by first looking at where we've come, what changes we've seen in a couple of areas that are relevant to our understanding of human security and conflict, and how long people have both understand and worked on these issues, and how politics really plays into a lot of these decisions, both to engage in conflict as well as to use, manage, or protect environmental factors. Let's get started.